Hello there and welcome to my food guide for Against the Storm. In this video I will summarize all you need to know for keeping your people healthy and happy and well fed. So first up, I want to cover a couple of basics, and then we're moving forward through the video and cover more advanced topics and some tips and tricks in the end. So your people need food every 2 minutes or 1 minute 40, depending on the species. So that means your people will require something about 2 pieces of food per season, summing up to something between 6 to 8 pieces of food per season, per year, per citizen, depending on their race, depending on the modifiers on the map. That's why I'm keeping things roughly like that. So with these numbers in mind, you can somewhat have an impression about what your food stockpiles mean, because the game doesn't really give you any good impressions about that. First, that's that. Now, then I want to cover raw food versus processed food. Raw food is basically everything you gather from these resource nodes, which can be eaten raw. You can see this here. This is all the stuff that is raw food. These have no negative effects whatsoever if they're being eaten by your people, but no specific positive effects either, except for not getting a resolve debuff for not having eaten something. By the way, your people have a certain resilience against hunger. You can check it out in the encyclopedia, which is working pretty much like that. As soon as the hunger tolerance is as soon as your citizen has suffered hunger, for example, here 3 times, they'll die. If the lizards suffer hunger 12 times, they die. And before that happens, they get a stacking debuff on their morale. That's basically how these things work. So you want a stockpile of raw food if you don't have anything else, but you want that processed food above all things, mainly because the recipes for processed food are just better than eating things raw. So you only have a neutral consumption of things in the field kitchen. Gonna talk about the field kitchen in a hot minute, but once you have any other workshop going, you will go and end up net positive in your investments. So here, skewers, that's where I wanted to go. Here, so for the skewers, as soon as you have a medium decent workshop, you put 7 pieces of food in and you get 10 pieces of food out. This is pretty much true for all of these workshops. The higher the efficiency, the more efficient the recipe grows. This sums up to a base lesson. If you can give your people processed food, you should give your people processed food out of so many reasons. But the efficiency reason is one that, for me personally, kicks out all the other reasons out of the box. Because if I can multiply my food, something that is necessary to stop my people from dying, that's a very good thing to do. Therefore, if you have the ability to make processed food, do it. But if you don't, give your people raw food. So the consumption control part here is therefore a very, very important tool for you. If you have a workshop running that consumes these raw foods, you should totally uncheck them here and stop them from base consumption, because it is really just a waste of that material. In a nutshell, if possible, you should have it run like that and give your people only processed food. But this is something that is always a work in progress and shouldn't be rushed in any way. But personally, my rule of thumb is if I start processing that stuff, nobody should eat it anymore. Now, when it comes down to food income, we have 2 different sorts of income. We have finite and infinite income sources. So we have these resource nodes that we can pick off from, and we have fertile soil where we can build farms on. Humans get a bonus on that. We also have sometimes build options for buildings that consume rainwater and work around the year. Farms only give a harvest once a year. So there's a lot of different income sources. How to handle these? It is honestly pretty simple for me personally. Specialization is here key. So if you want to use finite resources, then you should totally specialize into that. Draft buildings that are working out for that purpose. So if you see something that is present on your glades. That might be a good reason to draft that, or get yourself keystones that increase the usage of these nodes. You know, there are several keystone passives that can increase the number of uses there, or higher yield income stuff. There's a lot of mechanics that you can use if you want to go for plucking mostly, or you focus into the infinite productions where you should claim one, or for preferably two or three patches of fertile soil, plaster them with farms, and well, just get all the perks and stuff that you can get to maximize your income on that end. It's also pretty much worth it to keep an eye out to buy blueprints or acquire them otherwise for infinite income sources. It's really something that pays off a lot, and yeah, that's very, very important to note. Whether you go for this or that way, you should really try to specialize in some way, and always dip into both paths. If you are specializing into income via resource nodes, it doesn't hurt to draft a farm or a plantation and use that fertile soil that you have found, if you found any. If you don't waste your time on it, but you surely get the idea behind that. But specialization is key. Now, there's another thing that you should really keep an eye out on. This game spits out food on so flippin' many side productions. It is something that you should really keep an eye out. Kelpwood, every 10 pieces of wood here spit out 1 piece of salad. You have so many areas where you gather one thing and you acquire another thing. Here, we acquire something else while gathering food, for example. It works the other way too. What I'm trying to get down to is try to keep an eye out on your side incomes there and utilize them either by keeping them open for your people to eat, or block them for processing's sake. You might even use them as a trade good, whatever. But it's something that you should totally keep an eye out for, because it makes it easier to handle your income. Food should be, food processing buildings should be, by the way, drafted, in my humble opinion, after you've covered the base materials, brick, fabric, and planks, or 2 of 3. Then it is really worth looking out for buildings that produce food in one way or another. Be it flour as a base material for more food, or buildings that can make skewers or stuff that processes foodstuffs directly. So this should be pretty much your course of order. Try to get your food drafted after you have your base material incomes covered. Here, for example, I have 1 carpenter. Preferably, I would now try to get some place where I would get the bricks. In my personal opinion, I would go that way before I would go for a food income building. But yeah, that's my personal rule of thumb, and I went pretty well with that. Next point on my list, I want to talk about foods that require water and flour. There's a couple of recipes in your cookbook that work like that. So let's see, show all. Specifically, I am talking about porridge, for example. That's a very good example. Water is a fascinating ingredient insofar as it is totally infinite. If you have a geyser, you can have a specific color even as an infinite income source. And as you can see here, on the beanery, we would require only 6 units of drizzle water, more of the other colors, and then only a very minuscule amount of food on the other area to produce 10 pieces of food. Flour recipes work very similar. They have a very, very high efficiency. Biscuits, for example. Here, we put 6 pieces of flour and only 2 pieces of other food in and get 10 pieces of biscuits out. The flour recipe on the other side is a little bit more demanding though, and is, unlike the water in the water ingredient, something which is much harder to acquire but so worth it. So for a steady income of flour, you need either grain, mushroom, root, or nowadays even algae. So once you have one of these four checkmarked, you should not hesitate at all to get yourself a flour producing building, because two things. First up, you can then draft any food processor that demands flour and be happy with it. And if you don't get that lucky, you still have flour that you can export afterwards. And if you check it out here, 0.18 on the grain and 0.14 on the flour. It is a slight profit on that end, and in the worst case of all, you could just export that stuff. Altogether, flour and water foods are really efficient if you can handle the prerequisites. But I personally see the drizzle water geysers as a really big opportunity in your food income to get something done there. Next thing on my list, I want to spend a few words to the field kitchen. The field kitchen is really only a last resort. This thing has pretty much the worst efficiency that you could imagine. The field kitchen really, as you see there, 12 pieces in, 10 pieces out when it comes down to flour recipes, or 10 pieces in, 10 pieces out. What it's good for is to provide items to boost the resolve of people. That is, my personal opinion, is its main use. You should not try to feed your people via the field kitchen. It should be something to bring you through rough times early game, when you can use a couple of resolve points because you have the ingredients. But don't rely on that thing. It's basically really barely worth the work effort, in my personal opinion. So, food is an expansion reason. Especially when you're running off of resource nodes, you will be using expansion more often. If you're plucking resource nodes a lot, I recommend strongly relying more on the smaller glades, as these are highly profitable for you. And of course, specialize in the cornerstones. And last but not least, try to invest into cornerstones that also benefit from exploration. You know, there's a lot of them that give you extra resolve for opening glades and stuff like that. This is really powerful in combination with foraging. On the other hand, expanding towards more fertile soil is also worth it. Either way, if you notice that your food production is stalling, not sufficient, or running out, expand. Very important. Keep an eye on it, and the earlier you see the trend, the better. Food can also be used as a victory path. Your people have all specific needs up here, and every need of these, if it is satisfied, gives them a resolve bonus. A nice caveat here. If your people go on a break to eat something, and let's see Mr. Beaver here has these preferred foods of his available. Let's say Mr. Beaver finds biscuits and pickled goods. He will eat one portion of biscuits and one portion of pickled goods, because that's what they do. He will then have also the resolve bonus, but you might want to forbid him from that if you want to use the food to get through the storm times, or you allow them to do so during the peaceful times to use your food as a victory mechanic, because it is absolutely a thing that you can do, and I'm doing this quite often, honestly, to import a crap ton of specialty food and let them just run through it during peace times. But you can also use it, on the other hand, to forbid that quality food during the peace times and use it to get your people through the storm time. But food is therefore a victory path and a failsafe. This goes in both ways. This is really fascinating to use. The more you get used to the consumption control menu, the more you can do with your food in general. And as last word here from my personal experiences with the game, specializations into food production are so massively worth it. The moment you have a certain industry running, so for example, grain into flour into biscuits, the moment you see then a perk that allows you to increase any of your productions there, flour, biscuits, grain, whatever it might be, it is so worth it, because then you go to the point where you not only can feed all your people, you also have a trade good at hand which you can then start exporting or do whatever you want with it. But overproductions of food in this game are never a bad thing. Not at all. Food is a very valuable good, and if you manage to overproduce food, well done. You are on your way to win the game, as a matter of fact, because you can then either sell it and buy new food, as you see here. I totally would buy that stuff if I had currently the money. You get the idea. And I hope this video was helping you out on the topic of food, especially those little things with the food consumption timers and the caveat that your people will eat all of the complex food that they find if it is the preferred one is worth knowing, as it makes big change in your consumptions. Anyways, leave me your comments. If you have any questions, leave them here as well. If you have anything to add to the topic, I'm really all ears and eager to listen. And of course, leave a like, leave a subscribe, consider checking out the description box. And if you want to support this channel with your money, I would be more than grateful for that. And many thanks to all of you who do support Icon Gaming, and lots of thanks for watching this video. Really means a lot to me, and I hope you will be better off with food than before this video. See you there, and have a good day. Bye bye.